Once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latex gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm Daniel, and today we're talking about the Bryan Kohberger case, a case we haven't talked about in quite a bit because, well, let's face it, the guy pled guilty. He took responsibility for it. The evidence pointed in his direction. There's not really much of an argument to say otherwise that it wasn't him, not one that is, that can be taken seriously at least. And so here we are with some information in you. There's quite a bit actually. And so I'll probably be diving back into the Bryan Kohberger case a little bit more than I have been in recent because they've released quite a bit of stuff. And tonight, what we're going to talk about are two different things. We're going to talk about a unseen Walmart video that shows Bryan Kohberger, I guess acting differently after the murders. And then also we're going to look at a statement made by, or not a statement, but an article that was referencing his sister, who has come out and spoke, which oddly enough, we've had Howard Bloom on the channel. Howard Bloom, well-renowned author for the New York Times. He's written for Airmail article. He's written his own publications and his own books. And he had broke a while ago that his sister was writing a book and talking to somebody and perhaps was going to put out their story, the Kohberger story eventually. Well, it's not even been maybe 8-7 months since he pled guilty, if that, and the story is finally coming out. So if you take a little patience, I know that patience is something that a lot of folks, when they're working and covering cases, seem to fall back off of. But with a little bit of patience and seeing what plays out, seems like Mr. Bloom was right again. But let's look at these couple of articles. I have not read any of them, so I have no idea what's in them, no idea what we're going to find out, what we're going to read. I have purposefully done this so that I can react with you guys. So please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. We keep moving up, and I couldn't be happier. I want to say thank you guys for getting us. I think we just hit over 53,000 or 52,000, something like that, and it's a blessing. And I want to say thank you guys. You guys are amazing. And so let's continue here, and let's break this down. So first, we're gonna look at the new footage of one Bryan Christopher Kohberger. So this is the unseen Walmart video showing Bryan Kohberger acting differently after the Idaho student murders. We're going to watch this video here in a second. You know what? Give me a second. I don't know if there's audio or not, so I'm going to share it with audio just in case that there is audio and something for us to hear. But we're going to look at Kohberger shopping with gloves after the Idaho student murder. So this is after the murders that occurred. We're going to watch that video in a second. Let's read this. It says, newly unveiled Walmart surveillance video shows convicted murderer Bryan Kohberger was a regular shopper at the store during his single semester at the Pullman, Moscow area, that he had started shopping with gloves on after the killings of the 4 University of Idaho students. The previously unreleased videos were obtained by Fox Digital News through public records request. Police collected them as part of their years-long case against Kohberger, who pled guilty in July to avoid the death penalty in connection with the November 2022 massacre. The video shows Kohberger making at least 13 trips to Pullman store between October 28, 2022 and December 8th of that year, all but one after dark. The murders happened on November 13th, and Kohberger is believed to have had left town around December 15th for a cross-country drive with his dad to Pennsylvania, where he was arrested at his parents' house on December 30th. And here's an image. In fact, let me pull up the image really quick. This image here, so that way we can zoom in. This is, I believe, after the murders. And I was wondering what kind of gloves he was wearing. I mean, they could be snow gloves. It's hard to tell if they're snow gloves or those nitrate gloves. If they're the nitrate gloves that you wear, like surgical gloves, that's weird to be wearing at a store. If they're winter gloves, this was after November 13th. So in Idaho, Washington area, it is kind of cold up there. So I would reckon that, somebody wearing gloves doesn't stand out. Look at how pale he looks. Super pale. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is something similar to what he was wearing that night. A long sleeve shirt, and this here's wearing like some sort of beanie, and obviously the gloves and the long sleeve shirt, some pants. This may very well have been what he was wearing, that evening or the early morning hours of November 13th. Real quick, I want to say welcome BP 50975, becoming the newest membership. Member Common Sense coming in with their membership for 7 months. Good to see you. And Jennifer coming in with her membership for 9 months. Good to see you, Jennifer. Good to see all of you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What do you guys think about what he's wearing here? I mean, is it odd or suspicious to you? I mean, given what we know and what he's done and what he is, what he said he did. I mean, he's accepted responsibility for it. He accepted guilt. Like I said, I think this is just kind of a snapshot of what he was probably wearing that night. We got Nico with their membership for 17 months and C. Vanderhoof with their membership for 23 months. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Let's continue to read this. A visit to Walmart on November 12th was the last time the cameras recorded Kohberger at the checkout without gloves on. He checked out at 10:34 p.m. According to police reports, then committed the murders just after 4 a.m. the following morning. Subsequent videos show he returned to Walmart with gloves on multiple times, only exposed a single thumb after that when he pulled his credit card out of his wallet to pay while keeping the other fingers covered. The only exception appears to be the final visit to the store on December 8th, when he arrived with gloves on but took them off before searching through his wallet and paying. On one occasion, December 2nd, Kohberger arrived and left with another person, although they paid and at separate self-checkout registers. The supplementary report detailing his Walmart purchase did not include any reference to this person, and Kohberger is believed to have acted alone in the crime. It's interesting. December 2nd, he was with somebody else. Now, that could have been a number of people. This is before this could have been Nayoung Ko, his female, friend, acquaintance that he had broken into her house allegedly and moved some things around and scared the bejesus out of her. That could have been who it was. I'm just kind of speculating. I know he didn't have very many friends, so it was probably either her, maybe one or two other people that we've know about. But him going to the store with somebody else doesn't mean that he was acting in partnership with somebody else. Kohberger was studying a PhD for PhD in criminology at Washington State University, just about 10 miles away from the crime scene. Over the state line, the Walmart store is between the two schools. According to previously released court documents, a Walmart worker told police that a suspicious white male had come in looking for a black ski mask. Police confirmed that Kohberger used the same debit card on all 13 visits to the store and purchased only 2 items of evidentiary interest, according to Moscow Police Department documents. Ooh, what were those 2 items? Those were a beanie purchased during November 7th visit and utility clothes on December 1st. Don't sound very evidentiary value of the crime itself. I mean, maybe the beanie, but it sounded like he was wearing a balaclava mask. So I don't think the beanie has much to do with the crime itself. Police were unable to uncover specific details about the beanie, including whether it qualified as a ski mask. The second item turned out to be a 9-pack of gray hand towels, according to the document. Well, I guess, because of the time frame when he purchased it after the murders, I think this is, they're probably assuming that he was utilizing the towels to clean up the car. Search warrant returns also show police seized a Walmart receipt from Kohberger's home, that they served warrants on the retail giant as they tracked down where he bought the murder weapon, a K-bar knife. Police ultimately discovered Kohberger bought one on Amazon, and it later searched for another after the murders. The murder weapon itself was never recovered, but Kohberger left a K-bar knife sheath with his DNA on it at the crime scene. His biggest mistake, and I think that if that had happened, I think they would have eventually landed on his name, but I think there would have had some problems. One, some of the footage, maybe perhaps that they had in Pullman of his car entering back into Pullman and things like that. Maybe I know they did a preservation on it, so I'm hoping that wouldn't have gotten lost or destroyed or anything like that. But it could have, it could have gotten lost, destroyed, written over, some of those things. If it taken much longer time than catching him, there's certain pieces of evidence that they may have lost. They had lost quite a bit in the 7 weeks that he was, on the run, that any longer, it just would have made it more detrimental to the case. And then at that point, you start to lose some of the circumstantial evidence that was built to nail the guy. And without the DNA, you just have some suspicious, issues there. His phone was off during that time, and he drove a car that matched one that was similarly, seen on camera in the area. If you start losing some of the other evidence, it becomes a bit difficult to prove. And I think they would have came up to him. He was becoming an issue. They fired him for a reason. I think that eventually his name would have made it across to Moscow, and they would have said, "Hey, this guy's a problem. This guy's been an issue. Has been an issue with young ladies, and a problem with the professor and showing aggression and things of that nature. You may want to look into him." Then they discover that his vehicle matches. Then they'll figure out that his phone was also off during the same time. And so they probably maybe would have gotten, I'm hoping they would have gotten a hold of him eventually, shortly. But if it would have taken, a few more months or any longer than that, I think they would have been in danger of really not having much of a case. And so good thing he's not that, good thing he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. And he left back that K-bar knife sheath. Let's continue. Investigators later revealed the killer entered the home at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, wearing a black balaclava over his face. Through the lone eyewitness, she said she could see only his bushy eyebrows. Inside, he killed 21-year-old Madison Mogen, 21-year-old Kaylee Goncalves, 20-year-old Xana Kernodle, and 20-year-old Ethan Chapin. All but Kernodle were asleep at the start of the massacre, according to authorities. Kohberger is serving 4 consecutive life prison sentences without the possibility of parole, plus another 10. He has given no explanation of his crime. Now let's watch this video up here. And this is him December 2nd, 2022. So this is when I guess he's with somebody else there, and they separate and go into two different lanes. And he's just wearing gloves. I think those are the pants that were too tight for him. One that he kept taking a picture of himself. I think those are it. And again, they said that there was no evidentiary value. This is December 8th. Now those look like tighter gloves. I mean, it's hard to tell, but those definitely look like thinner gloves, like some of those nitrate gloves. There he goes. He exposes his hands. Look at how scrunched up they get. That's more of like the nitrate type of gloves. Like if they were like snow gloves or like, for keeping your hands warm. I don't know if they scrunch up like that when you take them off. And that one came out completely inside out when he pulled it off. See that? And it actually got stuck to like his hand. Those are the nitrate gloves. These are not snow gloves. These are not like to keep your hands warm type gloves. Yeah, black nitrate gloves. Yep. Let me know in the comment section. Is that what you guys think they are? The black nitrate gloves? I think they are. Man, if you're one of these folks and you remember this day, you're that close to somebody who was an evil person. He's got that weird gait. He's kind of limping, but I mean, that's kind of how he walked also when he was walking, in court. So it's not abnormally different. You know what I'm saying? It's not something too crazy, but it is a weird gait nonetheless. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys think that if those were, those surgical type of gloves to, and what do you think the reasoning is that he's wearing those? I'd understand wearing gloves to keep your hands warm. Why wear those to a store? And if he's concerned about like germs and things of that nature, why isn't he wearing like a COVID mask? Why just the gloves on the hands? So interesting things. The pants are too tight too. They are very tight. He walks stiff. Maybe that's the reason why. It's the pants are too tight. It's quite possible. Hit the like button if you think if you think they are the nitrate gloves. Hit the subscribe button as well, guys. I appreciate it. And share this, guys. Let's get this out there so that way we can get as many views as possible. So this is from the New York Times. Her brother pled guilty to the Idaho murders. Now she's ready to talk. Now, I've not read this at all, one bit. So I have zero idea of what it's going to be said, what anything is going to come out. I've stayed away from it. I saw the title. And I knew that I had to change the show. I was going to cover the Jack and Lily Sullivan disappearance. I'm moving that till tomorrow morning. I do want to talk a little bit more about the Spencer Tepe and Monique Tepe case that's happened out there in Ohio. The dentist with his wife who were shot. I talked about it last night, guys. I talked about there are some details in that case that make me think that the person in that case may be a Bryan Kohberger type of person. Go watch it. Let me know what you think. I went live last night about it, gave my information as to why I believe that there's a good possibility that, I think that there's a good possibility it was also a robbery gone wrong. But, given the cameras that were in the area and how they may have gotten in, and, it just sounds like somebody really cased out the area. And given the fact that the bodies were found in the bedroom, is an indication that the person wasn't let in through the front door by the homeowners, right? It's more of a situation where they were surprised in the bedroom. So the person made entry into the house somehow, without forced entry, without the couple knowing, and got to them in their room and surprised them, because I think he was found right next to his bed. So those things right there, you got a camera across the street that, in my opinion, may not capture anything. And the reason why I say that is because it would be, well, let me put it back this way. If it was somebody that maybe had a vendetta, or maybe somebody that was close to them, doing a victimology on those two victims, you would start to see if there's like a vehicle that pulled up and went to the front door that night. because the camera's like literally across the street. And so it just kind of sounds like the person made entry another way and was conscientious of the camera, because I would assume that if there was a vehicle that was seen on that camera pulling up, we would have, and law enforcement had some trouble trying to find this person, that we would have that information by now, that they're on the lookout for a specific vehicle, and perhaps maybe even an image of that vehicle. The fact that that hasn't happened leads me to believe that they don't have one on camera there. And there's a lot of question marks there. So go watch last night. I broke it down. I think everybody enjoyed it that was watching. I got a lot of positive feedback in the chat and the live show, and in the comment section afterwards. So go check it out. I do want to continue to cover that case. That's the basically one of the next cases that I'm going to be covering more in depth. I've been talking a lot about some missing persons between Jack and Lily Sullivan, Summer Wells, but with the Spencer and Monique Tepe case, that might be one that's front center. And I also covered a little bit of the or a lot of it actually of the young lady who just was found out here in San Antonio, Miss Olmos. Her body was found. She had committed suicide. And so it was an unfortunate situation. It was literally a couple of subdivisions from my house. And so I drove out there. I found some, I was literally searching the area about 200 yards away from where her body was found. So it is pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So if you guys haven't checked out my coverage on that, please do so. All righty. Colleen says, I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's what everyone is talking about. Yeah, if you could share my coverage of the show last night. I'm going to continue to talk about that case. There's so much stuff coming in. So there's a good possibility I go live maybe twice tomorrow. I don't know. My team's playing tomorrow night, so I may not. We'll see. But I may pivot again and push the Jack and Lily Sullivan disappearance. At the end of the day, Jack and Lily Sullivan, they wandered off, and they're unfortunately they wandered off, and outside of just kind of talking in circles, there's not any new news. There was a document that was dropped here recently. I haven't read it, and so that's one of the things that I'm trying to get into. But from what I understand, just kind of looking at the title and some of the bullet prints that I saw, it's nothing new. And so we'll see what happens. With the Tepe case, there's a lot of information that's coming out. But let's talk about this one. Since the arrest of Bryan Kohberger and the murder of the 4 college students, a case that captivated the nation, his family stayed silent. The sister now describes their pain and confusion. And so this is her sister. And I guess the goal here is to de-villainize themselves. I understand it. Everybody's looking at them probably as some sort of possible villain. I think both of his sisters lost their jobs because of Bryan Kohberger. Now, I will say this. We found Bryan Kohberger's father's plane ticket that he purchased, and when he purchased it, he purchased a plane ticket on December 10th to fly out December 11th. And the plan was to arrive there on December 11th and drive out December 12th. Unfortunately, when he flew in to Seattle, he was supposed to fly into Seattle, and from Seattle to Pullman Airport. The Pullman Airport was it was unable to land there because of weather. So he had to stay an additional night and then fly into Spokane, Washington, which is about an hour or so away. And so he ended up getting there the following night, the 12th, around 11 o'clock. Then they had to drive all the way back down. And then the following day, on the 13th, I believe it was, is when they drove across country and left immediately. Now, Bryan Kohberger's dad also purchased the plane ticket to fly back from from Pullman Airport to Seattle to Philly on January 20th. So there was an intention of him purchasing, having to drive back across country with Bryan Kohberger and then fly back across. But the interesting thing was the timing in this. Bryan Kohberger is, the bolo comes out about the White Elantra. White Elantra comes out on December 7th. All the panic and everything else happens after that. In fact, he stopped searching for K-bar knives after that too. So he had been searching for another K-bar knife up until the point that the bolo comes out. Now, why I think that is important is because, a lot of people are assuming that Bryan Kohberger was searching for the K-bar knife as a replacement in case somebody came knocking and asking, where's your K-bar knife? That, oh, it's right here and there's no blood on it, blah, 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 right? Well, here's the thing. When they got close is when he stopped to search or purchase it. You would think that when the bolo came out, and if his fear was that he didn't have in his possession a K-bar knife that they would come and look for, because remember, he bought it while he was in Pullman. I mean, while he was in Pennsylvania. So there isn't going to be a record in the Pullman, Washington, or the Moscow, Idaho area of him purchasing a K-bar knife in that area. And so if they, are going into his past to the point where they find that purchase in Pennsylvania, they got quite a bit of information against him. Well, anywho, so he's searching for another replacement before things heat up. My assumption is that if his intention really was to portray that he didn't lose his knife, or this is the correct one, then that search or that purchase of the knife would have intensified after there was more indication that he was the suspect. Meaning that once the evidence came out that the vehicle was a vehicle matching his, now that's when they're more than likely going to come knock on his door, right? There's a bigger chance because now that they know the make and model, they're going to be able to deduce people in the area. And he knows that it's only a matter of time before they get to him. And if they get to him and search it, research him, they may get warrants and things of that nature. They may find out that he purchased the K-bar knife at some point, and he now for sure needs to replace it. But yet he stopped searching for it. So what does that mean to you? What that means to me is that his replacement knife wasn't because he was replacing it in case somebody came knocking. To me, it means that he was trying to replace it because he was going to commit another crime. And he didn't have access to the old one, or he didn't want to use it, or whatever the case may have been. He was replacing it because he wanted to commit another crime. And I think there's evidence of him stalking other people, and there's pictures on his phone of other people. And I think that I really do truly believe that he may have tried to commit the crime again before he was going to fly out. Because the plan initially, from what I understand, was that Bryan Kohberger was going to fly out to back home for Christmas. But when the bolo came out, he couldn't leave his car behind. And so in a panic and everything else, an altercation ensues with John Snyder, and he manipulates the situation into having his father travel across country and pick him up. Now, how that's not a red flag, if you're Bryan Kohberger's father, that, they apparently were talking about the case. It's been proven that Bryan Kohberger and his mom and his sisters have talked about the Idaho case, and that they were invested in the information that was coming out about it. They spoke to each other about it. A white Elantra comes out and the bolo, and your son is freaking out and he's having problems all of a sudden. And now you got to go pick him up and change the plans. Now he's not flying over across. Now you need to go over there and get him. And then when you get him, you allow him to just hide an old Elantra in the garage. It's not like his car was an older classic vehicle that you don't want out in the elements, and that while he was in Pullman, Washington, it was stored in a garage. It wasn't. There's pictures of his vehicle out in the elements in Pullman, Washington. So for him to be, and I'm assuming he was adamant that he wanted to have his vehicle in there, and then, it was found, cleaning supplies and cleaning bucket were found next to it. He's not taking it out of the garage very often, from what I understand, and from what the documents were. I think he only took out his car once or twice while he was there. And yet he's constantly cleaning it while it's in there. I'm assuming he's also probably telling his dad he's going to sell it, which the Sellbright folks had indicated that he was looking for ways for another vehicle immediately after the bolo had come out, or that he got wind of the bolo. And so, maybe his goal was to he's thinking to himself, all right, I'm going to sell this vehicle on the other side of the country, and law enforcement is never going to find it. That's his plan. But, so he has to make sure that he gets the car out of there, and he can't do it if he's the one flying out. You know what I mean? And so Interesting stuff. But let's see what their confusion was. This is from Mike Baker. The harrowing news had spread across the country the fall of 2022. 4 college students were found stabbed to death in a house at the University of Idaho campus. Mel Kohberger was preparing to start a new job as a mental health therapist in New Jersey. Could not help feeling a sense of alarm. Her brother Bryan was living just 15 minutes from the scene of the mysterious killings. Investigators had no suspects, and Bryan was just the type of person who would have left his door unlocked and go out on late night jogs. Yeah, right, late night jogs. Bryan, you are running outside with this psycho killer on the loose. She remembers telling him, "Be careful." He thanked her for checking on him and assured her that he would stay safe. That's because he was the guy, right? In early December that year, her brother had returned to her parents' home in Pennsylvania for the holidays. And later that month, Miss Kohberger got a call from her sister Amanda. Law enforcement officers had burst into the house in the middle of the night and placed Mr. Kohberger in handcuffs. She was like, "I'm with the FBI. Bryan's been arrested," Miss Kohberger said. And I was like, "For what?" The response, "The Idaho murders." For a brief moment, she wondered if it was a prank. Then a sense of nausea took over. I wonder why. I mean, is it because all of a sudden everything's starting to make sense? You know, the weird behavior that your brother's doing, the fact that everything looks like his vehicle. You know, is that what it is? Is that what it is? Yes. Thank you, Karen. Do you remember to put your DNA on that thumbs up? I appreciate that. Literally overnight, the mystery of who stabbed 4 young people to death in an ordinary neighborhood full of college students gave way to a new question. Why Kohberger, a reclusive but dedicated PhD student who had been on a path to a career in criminology, may have mounted a silent and brutal attack on 4 students from another university who had no apparent connection to him? The arrest upended the lives of Kohberger's family. Now, here's the thing, though. When it comes to like motive and people saying, "Oh, no connection, no this, no that," this guy bought the knife in Pennsylvania before he moved over. His intention, you know, was always, in my opinion, that he was going to commit a crime like this. He told law enforcement that going into criminology, what was the term that he used during his interrogation? It inspired him. Now, given what he did, what did it inspire him to do? Was it the fact that he was seeing the point of the killer? Was he making a connection with these individuals that were psychopaths, that were serial killers? Because he began to search it on his own. He began to look up those terms for himself. That was found in the Cellbrite stuff, you know, and all the searches and things of that nature. You know, can psychopaths do this? Can they do that? Can they do this? He, at a young age, and I had been putting this out there for a long time, was aware of self-aware of his personality disorders. He was writing it in his Tappa Talk, right? And because of those things and what he was writing, and the fact that it was so eerily similar to what was in the American Psycho movie, it was pretty obvious that at a very young age, this guy was looking for somebody to relate to, and he found his relation in the wrong person. And as he got older, he went from fantasy serial killers like Patrick Bateman from the movie American Psycho to real life serial killers like Ted Bundy and BTK and others, to the point where he went to go study under world-renowned psychologist Catherine Ramsland, who was famous for having these interactions with these individuals. And this is where he succeeded the most. And he was able to hide and mask, and even had a person who was a female that he studied under and was, I guess, tricked by him or manipulated by him. And I think a lot has to do with the fact that he was living at home, and maybe perhaps a lot of what he was having to do in the cells where it was online, but it wasn't all online. All right, let's continue this. The tabloids stationed cameras outside of their home, snapping images of Miss Kohberger's father cleaning up the damage from the police raid. Online sleuths scrutinized footage of Amanda acting in 2011 horror film that she also involved in stabbings. Ms. Kohberger said she was angered by the internet posts from people who speculated whether her family had known all along that Kohberger was the killer. I mean, how do you not, dude? You know, the way he's acting and stuff. Like, it don't sound like the glove wearing and all this other stuff was a common thing. You get what I'm saying? Him cleaning his car, the fact that he's lived so close and a vehicle matching his car's description. Like if I'm a little not necessarily taken back, but I would struggle to believe that I would have had a hard time myself, you know, if I knew Bryan Kohberger. Not saying that if I was investigating this case that I would have, you know, came to Bryan Kohberger's name much faster than law enforcement did. You know, I probably wouldn't have, you know, compared to the FBI now. Local law enforcement and knowing with my conversations with Steve about where they were in certain aspects of their investigation and what they were looking into, and given the evidence that was there in front of you, yeah, I think I probably would have gone a little bit further along than they would have compared to where, not necessarily the FBI. I think the FBI did a bang up job. As soon as the FBI got involved, they were able to, you know, take the DNA and not just the DNA, but they got everything from his background, his cell records. They got everything going with the Cellbrite stuff and everything in between there. And you know, just listen to what Payne said. He's like, I'm inexperienced in all this, that, and a third. So I'm going to have to lean on all these other guys, which isn't, there's nothing wrong with that. That's why you have experts in those fields to come and testify and do those things. But you could see that if it was not for the FBI, I mean, that would have been another, you know, situation on its own. If it was solely led by Moscow Police Department, I think that this definitely would have became a cold case had it not been for the FBI. But going back to this, Bryan Kohberger's sister being in a horror film that involves stabbings. I mean, you know, I understand that, I mean, I don't understand why that would make you mad. I mean, I get the situation, his anger, you know, makes you mad and things of that nature, but given what he's accused of and given the film that you were a part of, you know, I think any normal, rational person is going to wonder, you know, is that where it started? You know, this is 2011. Bryan Kohberger was born when? In 94, I believe. And so in 2011, he's like 14, 15 years old. Yeah, is that a, you know, it's in a very impressionable young time in a young man's life. He's going through puberty and a lot of different things. And apparently this guy had a lot of, you know, it sounds like he was on a lot of psychological medications and things of that nature growing up for different things. At least that's what he wrote about, you know, and I think that's what he was kind of struggling with, the whole visual snow and all this other stuff. And then there was also the abuse of stimulants. And so, can, you know, a film and his, you know, being involved in that and seeing that type of material, with his sister, somebody that he knows personally, you know, how does that have effect on his psychology? You know, it's I think it's a little bit different, you know, than just watching some of these movies where people are having, you know, whose lives are being taken during the film. And another thing, having a personal relationship to the person whose lives are being lost in the film. You know, how can that affect somebody like Bryan Kohberger going through what he was going through, and did that have effect? I mean, I don't think, you know, that's a question for the psychologist, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility is what I'm trying to say. Goes on to say, I've always been a person who has spoken up for what is right. She said, if I ever had a reason to believe my brother did anything, I would have turned him in. For the past 3 years, my family has kept quiet, avoiding interviews, even as Mr. Kohberger pled guilty and accepted 4 life sentences. His parents and siblings wanted to do everything in their power to respect the victims' families during the legal process. Ms. Kohberger said, and even now, she expressed fear that she might say something that could further traumatize them. Her family's challenges, she said several times, cannot compare to those families have endured. That's true. And I mean, she didn't commit the crime either. You know, her brother did. And you can't blame the family. You know, I can say that, and I think that most people can say that. I think it's, you know, it'd be weird not to notice certain things. But then again, I mean, if you look at some other cases that are out there where somebody has committed a crime and their spouse or their loved ones, or they have new found interest from some of these weirdos that are out there who go out and like, fall in love with a Bryan Kohberger and things of that nature. Uh, there's a thing called love is blind. And I said this throughout the entire time that we talked about the Bryan Kohberger case, where love is blind. And what that means is it's not necessarily meaning that you're going to fall in love with somebody. And it doesn't matter what they look like. No, no, no. What love is blind mean is that you love somebody that you're blind to what they really are and who they are and what they've done. And I've seen in certain cases where folks are like, like in the Richard Allen case, Kathy Allen, she's very adamant that she thinks her husband is still innocent, even though he's admitted to it. And if you look at the timeline, it's pretty solid. It makes it almost impossible for somebody else to be bridge guy. Now, could somebody else have been involved? That's quite a possibility. I think that that needs to continue to be investigated. But when you look at the the height of the person on the bridge, you look at the pants at the bottom of the pants, you can tell that the pant legs are folded up. That's an indication of somebody who's shorter. The feet are small. When the person has to lift up and, lift up their foot as high as they do to reach the rail tie in front of them, that's another indication that somebody's shorter. And then also try this with wearing pants. Lift up your boot in like a marching, position where you have to lift up your foot high enough to reach another rail tie, and see what that does to the bottom of your pant leg. When you lift up your leg that way, it's going to raise up your pant leg. Now, the fact that his pant leg does kind of raise up, but there's no movement at the bottom of the pants is an indication that the person's short and the pant legs are long on him. Right now, if it was Ron Logan or somebody who was taller and they were making that same step, you're going to see socks. You're going to see top of the shoe. You don't see that with Richard Allen in that video. You also can tell with the arms, on the sweater. They're all scrunched up. That's another indication that someone is shorter. In that area of Delphi, Indiana, it's a small community, not very big whatsoever. So you're not going to have where people are going to go get tailor-made clothing. So somebody who's vertically challenged, as Richard Allen is going to have to deal with some of the issues of purchasing clothes, especially if he's having to buy, if he's a little bit on the chunkier side and short, he's going to have to buy clothes that fit him and usually they're a little bit longer than normal, which is why when you see the person walking on the bridge, a lot of people think that's a fanny pack that's hanging out. It's not a fanny pack. That's his shirt. And that's how long his shirt is compared to his body. And the 43-second video, that's a lot clearer and not zoomed in. You can tell how close he is to Abby as he's walking behind, and that person is extremely short. I mean, there's so much evidence there that indicate that that's a short person. Then you also have the fact that he mentioned that he entered the area and he got there at 1:30. That's what he had first said. I know a lot of people saying, well, he changed the story later. Well, you know what? Here's the problem. He described a situation with a few juveniles that were walking out of the park at the same time that he was walking into the park. But they made contact with those juveniles, and those juveniles had taken a selfie just before that interaction, which they remembered. Now, memory is tricky, but a selfie and the timestamp isn't, and that came back at 1:26 p.m. So it would have been impossible for it to have been earlier in the day and that interaction to have occurred. So, there's more, and I'm probably going to break down a little bit more of the Delphi case because I continually, every time I say, Richard Allen is guilty, I get a few people in the comment section. They're like, hey, well, if you really look at this, and I'm like, and I've said this in this case here too, just because something looks good doesn't mean that it fits the bill. Everything has to fit, just because there's an accusation, you got to look at the investigation and the result of the investigation as well. You can't just look at the accusation in the beginning. Just because you have some sticks on the bodies and they might look like a certain thing, which nobody has said this is that ruin or that is that ruin. In fact, the closest thing that anybody has said in the Delphi case is that, and I've seen the crime scene photos, is that, one of the little girls is positioned similar to the hangman in a tarot cards, and that some of the sticks look like one set of ruins that mean one thing and another thing means completely different. So it's just like a combination and a mixture. It's not really connected together. And in my opinion, I think it's just people looking at and seeing patterns and things that aren't there, like the Virgin Mary and a tortilla type of thing. And so you have to look at the investigation into those people that were owed this too, and Do they have an alibi? Does Richard Allen have an alibi? And then you got to start looking at everything. You can't just look at it and say, oh, that sounds good. You got to continue to work the problem. You got to continue to look past, just that first part of it. And then once you do that, the picture clears up. Anyways, I've gone too far off the deep end. Let's continue this. Talking about all these other cases. You guys got me riled up tonight. Anyways, and while the family still does not want to discuss the crime itself, that's interesting. Ms. Kohberger agreed recently to share part of their story, saying she hopes she could bring out the truth about her family and what it's been like to be dragged in the epicenter of a true crime epic. And so I guess this is where the motivation of what she's trying to do. She's trying to demonsterize her family is basically, I guess, the intent of her coming out to the public. And, I'll be honest, her coming out and giving her side of the story in this form, depending on how much she got paid, if she got paid, is less likely a form of trying to financially, it means to me it's less likely a financial gain, coming out with her story. Had she done what Howard Bloom said, written a some sort of, fiction book about their experience and was profiting, or she got paid from this interview, that's a different story, right? So it just kind of depends on where it is. But if she's not getting paid for this interview and she's not really doing a book or any of those things, and then that leads more credence to me, at least, that she's being honest about the intentions of coming forward, being to demonsterize her family and perhaps maybe separate. They don't want to talk about the crime itself. They want to separate. They got to carry his name, the Kohberger name, and so they want to separate themselves from what he did or says. This is kind of what I'm getting at here for right now. Let's see. No DNA of RA. Yeah, well, there wasn't really any DNA of BK here either, outside of the knife sheath. And he was in closer combat or in closer proximity with more people, in the Bryan Kohberger case, and had a shorter amount of time with them. And he left less DNA as well. I also think that the investigation wasn't the best in the Delphi case, but just because the investigation isn't the best doesn't mean that he didn't commit the crime. Just because they missed things doesn't mean that he's all of a sudden innocent. There's a difference between being able to prove somebody committed a crime and them being factually not committing the crime. You can commit a crime and be found innocent. OJ's a pretty good example of that. And I think they found some new information about that. I think he confessed to somebody at some point before he passed. And so, for those that thought about, some other different scenarios, there wasn't the case. But he was all the way up to acquitted. So just because they didn't find something doesn't mean it didn't happen. I hope that makes sense. All right. Family members of high-profile criminals have long struggled to navigate the collateral infantry thrust upon them. The Kohbergers found themselves not just interrogated by detectives, but subject to the scrutiny of an assortment of amateur sleuths. Ooh, I take offense to that one. I'm the amateur sleuth. Part of the true crime forever that has brought millions of people together in Facebook groups, Reddit forums, and YouTube channels. Where her brother was arrested, Ms. Kohberger had been training to start a job as a mental health counselor, but her new employer was flooded with inquiries that she agreed to abandon the position. More recently, a book about the case emerged on Amazon with the author listed as Melissa J. Kohberger, suggesting that someone was trying to make money by selling a false version of her story. It's confusing, she said. It's painful. It's like being victimized, but not really being a victim. Yeah. Mr. Kohberger grew up in the Poconos, and the home centered on the family. With readings, books like Little House on the Prairie and lessons rooted in the mother's Catholic upbringing, Ms. Kohberger said she and her brother and her sister had been imbued with values of loyalty, self-resilience, and putting the needs of others ahead of their own. Really, it sounded a little bit different, when I was reading those documents and I was reading some of these books about Bryan Kohberger's upbringing, heroin and drugs and breaking into houses, stealing from his friends, playing hide and seek in the woods. And while his buddies were out hiding, he was running into their house and jacking stuff, cornering women, being kicked out of the law enforcement classroom. Oh, no, that's Little House on the Prairie stuff right there. That's the Little House on the Prairie. That's what they learn in that, you know. They're good folk up there. They ain't do anything wrong. I'll be honest. I'm sorry. This sounds like crap. This part right here sounds like crap. But yeah, they're the American family. You know, he called his mom mother, talked to his dad, called him father. That wasn't weird at all. That's all that Little House on the Prairie stuff. That's how they did it there. You know, I don't remember that guy's name, but Chris Kringle or something. I don't know. The father there for Little House on the Prairie. That's please. Yeah, I don't buy this one. Some of her fondest childhood memories were the nights where her parents, Marianne and Michael, ordered takeout food, woke up the children laying in blankets out on the deck. They all looked up at the stars, talking about astronomy and the wonders of the world. This is where the stargazing alibi started, I guess. Come on, man. This guy was stealing your phone when he was 14 years old or 19 years old so he can go buy dope. This guy was, you know, constantly being a bully to people. He was breaking into houses. He was stealing things. He was stealing medication. He was stealing, I think he stole knives and coin collections. This guy was a problem. You know, he got kicked out of the law enforcement class because of, I think he was stalking a little girl. This guy was a problem. Oh, but no, just like his alibi the night of November 13th, they all looked up at the stars and talked about astronomy and the wonders of the world. You know, that's what he also brought up in his what was it in his interrogation, that, you know, he really doesn't believe in religion, but until he saw the beauty of the wonders of the world driving across the country. I think, isn't that what he said? Driving across the country, seeing the wonders of the world. And that's what made him believe, you know, in religion and God, that there's a higher power. It wasn't anything else. It was the wonders of the world. So interesting choice of stuff here to put in here. Stargazing and the things that he was talking about in his interrogation. I'm kind of glad I didn't read this beforehand. This is, I don't know if I would have had the same reaction. I mean, I would have had the reaction, you know, reading it, but I don't know if I would have portrayed the same reaction out to you guys. But yeah, come on now. Friends have described how Mr. Kohberger had been overweight as a teenager. I guess he did have a few friends. There was Casey. There was her sibling. There was the people that he went and played hide and seek with and stole from. There was Jeremy Saba, the guy, but he ended up overdosing. There was apparently another young lady that he was friends with that overdosed. I think there was like two friends, but yeah. And they ended up not being friends with him in the end because he talked one of them into driving him around so he can go buy some dope. And then the other one, he bullied him until they didn't want to be his friend anymore. So yeah, let's see. Friends have described Kohberger as being overweight as a teenager and had a standoff personality. Oh no, I hit a button. Let me go back real quick. Let's see. Where was I? Little House on the Prairie. Okay, here I am. Friends have described Kohberger as being overweight as a teenager and standoffish, something family now believes was related to autism. So they now believe that. This wasn't something I guess they believed at the time. Now that, you know, he was facing the death penalty, they really did believe that. You know, how convenient. He endured persistent bullying, Ms. Kohberger said. He wrote online during those years of having no emotion, little remorse, and feeling as if an organic sack of meat with no self-worth. Later, he spiraled into heroin addiction. When he stole Ms. Kohberger's phone and sold it at the mall to buy more drugs, she said her parents alerted the police. Ms. Kohberger said that they were all worried that he was on the path of an early death. No, he caused early death. This ultimately happened with one of his friends. But after he went through treatment, she said Mr. Kohberger seemed to be on a better trajectory. She and her brother both shared an interest in crimes and psychology. She was pursuing a career in mental health therapy, and he began discussing a career in policing, going to study psychology at DeSales University in Eastern Pennsylvania before getting accepted in a PhD program into criminology at WSU. And again, because they didn't have a test that she had to take to get in. He wasn't confident enough into taking an acceptance test before, and so he went with only one of two places. Remember that? We're also proud of him because he had overcome so much, he said. And, and I can understand that, on the surface at that point, they didn't know he was going to go commit a quadruple homicide. He did turn his life around. He did go from an overweight person that was having a lot of problems and drug addiction and things of that nature to turning his life around. He was somewhat on the right path. He just had he was able to manipulate them. I mean, think about the plane situation that we just spoke about. He had to get his car out of there. And he somehow manipulated his folks into changing the plans. And these aren't the most wealthy of folks. And now I do know that they used, air mile. I think they used miles from a credit card to purchase the ticket, but they dropped everything to purchase a plane ticket to go across country from one day to the next. That's not a cheap flight, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, even if you're using miles, it's a lot of miles to use to do that. And he was willing to do it. And so I say that to say that they had no idea that he was going to go commit this crime. I don't blame them for that. I don't blame them for what Bryan Kohberger did. I think that had they come out and, I don't really blame them for anything. I think that they were a little bit, I guess, naive to not have seen some of the signs there. But like I mentioned before, they love their family, or they didn't really, it takes a lot for them to see that. And even when all the information is presented in front of certain people, if they just don't want to believe it, they won't see it. Love is blind, as I mentioned earlier. He was still socially awkward and could be abrasive. She said they often argued. Still, she said she never saw him be violent. When she once tried to force him out of the house during an argument, he de-escalated the situation by holding back her hands. Interesting. The lack of violent history was one of the reasons the family found it so disorienting to hear that Mr. Kohberger was accused of such a barbaric crime. In the days before the raid, the family had gathered for Christmas. Miss Kohberger remembered being thrilled to see her brother back home in Pennsylvania and hugging him tightly. To accommodate the strict diet he had followed, their mother had made him vegan cookies for the holidays. They played TV party games one night. Oh, the Kohbergers and their Christmas special. As Miss Kohberger was cleaning up the kitchen, a sharp edge of her foil caused her finger to bleed. Her brother, initially expressing disgust at the sight of blood, helped clean, cut up, and cover it with a Band-Aid. Oh, here he come to. What do you think? He's going to be like a vampire, and he was going to be like, and the sight of blood. I need to. It's not a vampire. I mean, he looked like one. Don't get me wrong, he looked like one. But come on now, please. During those days at home, Ms. Kohberger says she recalls him only briefly mentioning the Idaho murders, saying that the investigators were still hunting for the killer. But yet they had these conversations on the phone to the point where they sent each other article clippings of what they were talking about. Now, the reason why you do that, for one, is maybe perhaps if, they feel that they didn't see anything, but it happened during a conversation. So they were on the phone. Bryan Kohberger was on the phone with his mother when his mother sent him a news clipping article. Now, why would that happen? During the conversation. To me, it seems like, one, they were probably talking about the case. Two, there was probably some sort of disagreement there, and she was trying to say something like, oh, look, this is what they got. And this is how I know. Look, this is the article where I found it at. I wonder what that was. But to say that they had only briefly mentioned it, I mean, come on now, please. The guy, his father couldn't stop mentioning the Brent Kopacka shooting when he got pulled over twice. To criminology folk, this guy's a criminology student. He's not going to mention it at all. Now, I get it. He doesn't want his family to know it was him, but come on. I don't know. Investigators, after going on weeks without naming a suspect, had turned into the public in early December and requested help finding a white Hyundai Elantra with a model year between 2011 and 13 that had been seen circling the victim's house on the night of the killings. Ms. Kohberger, knowing that her brother had driven a white Elantra back from school, said that she had briefly wondered if they were looking for the same model, but then learned it was a different year, 2015. And I get this, when when you don't want to believe in something, you're going to try to find anything to validate the possibility that it wasn't what it looked like or what it was. And so I can see where she's like, even though if you look at a 2013 Elantra and a 2015 Elantra, they're almost indistinguishable. I can see how that could persuade their thought process in that moment to side with it being something that was validating that it wasn't her brother. I can see that. Unknown to the family, investigators had pinpointed Mr. Kohberger as a suspect within the days of his return to Pennsylvania. They'd already started surveilling the house. In the early hours of December 30th, Mr. Kohberger was with his parents, were alone in the house. Police officers burst in with guns drawn, shattering glass, and rushing to place him in handcuffs. In court, law enforcement officials said that Mr. Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath that had been laid next to two of the victims. Amazon records showed that he had purchased the same style of knife, and there was the white Elantra. Investigators determined the car seen near the murder house matched the model he drove. Ms. Kohberger said her mother had been praying daily for the families of the victims. I thought they rarely talked about it, but yet her mom was praying daily. Ms. Kohberger herself has put the names of the victims, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, and their birthdays into their digital calendar. That is kind of weird. So that she will get reminders about them. That's weird. I mean, I get the sentiment. I get what you're trying to say there, but I mean, you got to understand that. I don't know. That's weird. Let me know in the comment section. Do you guys think that's weird that they did that they put their birthdays into their digital calendar as reminders for them? Hit the like button if you think that's weird. That is weird. That's just weird. I mean, during the holiday, she said her family has grief. So wait, they did that before his arrest? Oh, wait, never mind. It says during the holiday, she and her family has felt the grief that Mr. Kohberger has not been with them, but she would think the victims' families and the pain they must be feeling. So this is after the fact. The idea is making me so emotional that I can barely speak to you about it, she said in tears. Steve Goncalves, the father of Miss Goncalves, said that he had sympathy for Mr. Kohberger's sisters and the scrutiny they had endured in recent years, but he said he still had lingering questions about what Mr. Kohberger's parents might have known or suspected. Ooh, let's see if this gets interesting here. As criminal case proceeded, the Kohberger family was troubled by the intense discussion around it. Mr. Kohberger's emotionless mannerisms and the families attributed to his autism became something people treated as evidence of him being a monster. He is a monster. Research has not established any conclusive causal links between the autism and a violent crime. There were reports that he had interacted with some of the victims on social media and had gone to a restaurant where two of them had worked, but investigators later dismissed those claims. However, Selbright did say that he did have Mad Greek on his phone, that did occur. And just because investigators could not find a connection of him going there does not mean that he did not go there. You know, it just means that they couldn't find it. He may have paid cash. He may have gone in and not purchased anything. They have gone in to utilize the latrine or the bathroom and then walked out. All the attention Ms. Kohberger said made it hard to imagine that her brother could ever get a fair trial. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of folks that still think that this guy's innocent. I mean, they still put out content. I saw some of it today, getting thousands of views. It's insane. But even after he's admitted guilt, there's still folks that are like, "Hey, he's still innocent." Even though I would bet a serious amount of money that Bryan Kohberger has little to no respect for those people, mainly because I think he thinks that they probably are not smart enough or not to his level of intelligence to figure out what he did, and that's just the truth. Goes on to say, and she could see the wild speculation surrounding the case seemed hurtful to the families and friends of the students who died. Once an avid true crime fan herself. Okay, so this is interesting. So she was an avid true crime fan. Her brother is a criminology student, PhD student, 10 miles away from the biggest, unsolved crime at the time in a while. And they rarely spoke about it. That seems weird. Let me know in the comment section. Does that make sense to you? That don't make sense to me. She now looks back on that with regret. It's human nature to be curious about darker things, she said. That's how we keep ourselves safe. But I think we should try and come together for true crime culture that is way more protective and empathetic for the families of the victims. The family has tried to support Mr. Kohberger since his arrest. They have held regular calls with him, avoiding discussions about the details of the case. This is them being in denial and not wanting to accept what he did, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Ms. Kohberger says she has kept him posted about life back home, and he sometimes talks about his latest interest in psychology. The Myers-Briggs personality assessment and the biomural mind theory, in which two sides of ancient human brains operated independently. I guess this is what Bryan Kohberger is studying in jail right now, as he's being threatened that he's going to get butt touched by the inmates next to him. Isn't that what he claimed or was at least complaining about? That his neighbor told him he was going to butt touch him? I think so. For his birthday, Mr. Kohberger asked his family to make a cake, a butt touch cake, that he thought his sister Amanda would like. He asked Mel to blow out the candles. Oh, poor Kohbergers. Throughout all, they had tried to reconcile the son and brother they loved and still do. The man depicted by the prosecutors and the police, the man who pled guilty to killing 4 young people with no apparent motive. When he entered the guilty plea in July, his parents attended with his mother sobbing in the front row. Weeks later, when he was sentenced, Ms. Kohberger had hoped to attend, but she stayed home to care for her father, who has developed heart problems. That's unfortunate. They watched the hearing together on the television. So that's why Mr. Kohberger wasn't there. He has developed some heart issues since then, you know. As weird as some of these things are, I mean, again, the Kohbergers didn't commit this crime. Bryan Kohberger did. And, you know, there's some weird things that they have said and done. The whole calendar thing was weird to me. But, you know, they didn't commit this crime, you know. Just seems kind of weird. Some weird stuff there. But hit the like button if you think it's weird. Some of the victims' family members, given a chance to address in court, unloaded their anger at Mr. Kohberger, who sat largely with a blank-faced silence. You're definitely a demon from hell, one of the family members said through a lawyer. The truth is you're as dumb as they come, stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy, weak, dirty, said another. There was some more stuff she said. I wish could have laid it in a little bit more. The judge said that he could not discern any redeeming quality in Mr. Kohberger because his grotesque acts have evil have buried the hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him. Ain't nothing good about Kohberger with what he did. Ms. Kohberger holding a paper heart she painted similar to the one she gave her brother for his sentencing hearing. So this is what he had blacked out. Okay. I wonder why he blacked it out. Because he had blacked it out, the heart. So interesting. Through it all, Mr. Kohberger sat with his hands in his lap, nothing in front of him but a pen and a piece of paper that appeared to have a small drawing on it. On the internet, some of the amateur sleuths watching the proceedings zoomed in to scrutinize the sketch, speculating it appeared to be a dark heart. It looked like a dark heart. Maybe it wasn't. Bryan Kohberger keeps creepy drawing close during sentencing for quadruple killing, a tabloid headline declared. In truth, Ms. Kohberger said it was a heart surrounded by vibrant colors that she herself had drawn for her brother. Even if she could not be there in person, she said she wanted him to know that he was loved. Well, I don't think he deserves it. I'll be 110% honest with you. This piece of crap don't deserve it. Interesting stuff, guys. Interesting stuff. Some weird comments. I hadn't read it until that moment. Like I said, I'm glad I waited to do it with you guys because I don't know if I would have had the same reaction as I would have had live on the show. Now, if you have any stars, or if you have any questions, put a couple of stars. I'll answer some of your questions in the comments section. I do know I saw a lot of stuff here that I do need to go over, so let's break it down. We are at, I believe, Miss Vanderhoof has been a membership for 23 months. Jeannie, been a member for 12 months. Thank you. Thank you. FloJo coming in with their membership for 25 months. Tash Coley coming in with their membership for 30 months. Good to see you guys. Good to see you. And then we got Mountain Mama coming in with their membership for 34 months. Best channel on YouTube. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. We have Sue Joy coming in with their membership for 16 months. Kel gifted a Drunk Turkey Show membership. Thank you, Kel. We appreciate you. Stephanie comes in with their membership for 9 months. Thank you. Blobs and Dolls comes in with their 149 super sticker out of California with your Canuck Bucks. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Steven comes in with $20 saying, "Go Steelers." Welcome back, TJ Watt. Also, 2 games does not fit Metcalf's crime. I 100% agree with you, my man. You are absolutely right. Let me know if you guys have any questions for me. Put a couple of comments in the comment section. Put a couple stars so I know you're talking to me and not talking with each other. And let me know what you guys are thinking. C Joy comes in. Poor father reliving cross-country trip with son. Yeah. And I can only imagine. It's not fair. Oh, brother. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. People who still think BK is innocent are more spirit. I mean, at what point do you finally just kind of say, all right, this guy did it? You know, this guy admitted it. I mean, does he have to come out and spell it out for you? And even at then, I'm fairly positive people are going to say, well, it's because he's in jail and they're mistreating him. His neighbors telling him he's going to butt touch him. And, you know, he's not having a good time. You know, he doesn't have any friends. They don't let him go out and play during recess. And he's in a cell 23 hours a day. That's the reason why he's confessed. No, it's not. It is not. Let's see. Oh, well. Let's see. Dan's a little spicy today. Long overdue. I don't think I'm being spicy. I'm just, you know, to me, I'm just reacting in real time because some of these things just, you know, I don't like. I mean, there's some weird stuff that's being said, and it's almost to a point like, you know, talking about, oh, they did stargaze. What are you trying to say? That his alibi is real? What are you trying to say when you put that crap out there like that? That oh, he did stargaze with us. It's a common thing. You know, what message are you trying to put out there with that? You know, the little house on the prairie story and the Kohberger Christmas. Like I get it. You know, you're not responsible. You're not the monster that he is. And I 100% get it. 100% get it. But at the same token, you know, I mean, I'll be honest, almost saying nothing probably would have been better than coming out with some of these things that you were saying. But that's just my opinion. That's my opinion. And it's only my opinion. I know some people get mad at my opinion. I don't understand why my opinion affects other people's egos, you know, not just in this case, in other cases too. Like, if you don't agree with me, well, I mean, okay. It's okay. You know, there are channels and stuff that I don't agree with. I don't watch them. I don't, you know. I'm not one of those guys that get off on getting mad. You know, it's not me, you know. But you know, to each is your own. If you want to come up here and listen to my opinion and it's different than yours and you want to get all riled up about it, well, I mean, you have some other problems. You definitely do. You definitely do. He was complaining a lot about the bananas. Yeah, if it's not the bananas, it's the butt touch. If it's not that, it's God knows what. I wonder why they were bruised. He is miserable in and out of prison. Yeah, he definitely is. He is. Let's see. Put a couple stars, guys. But yeah, Brian is totally evil. I 100% agree with that. It is okay to occasionally go on the Kohberger channel and antagonize them. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I don't do it. I haven't gone on a Kohberger channel in a very, very long time. I just so happened to see one live the other day, and I was like, wow, they get quite a few views. They're still talking about this case. I had no idea they were still talking about the case. I kind of moved on. You know, I guess because when you're in law enforcement and stuff like that, to be honest with you, like, you can't harp on the results of things. You can only control what you can control. And so, you know, you put forth the best case you can. You make sure you dotted your T's and crossed your I's and you got the right person and stuff like that. But then you let the courts do the court stuff, and you go out there and testify to the best of your ability, and be out there honestly and truthfully. And you let the rest of it, go where it may. If somebody pleads out, somebody takes a deal, somebody does this, somebody does that, or, somebody makes a deal and they get off on the case. You can't take those things to heart. And so, like, for me, it's a little weird to continue to cover a case that, I'll be honest, once there's a result, coming back from the law enforcement aspect of it, that's when, my job's done. It's not like I'm gonna, there's nothing else to me, especially in this case. There's more than enough evidence to show that this guy committed this crime. And I was quite shocked that it was still a topic of conversation as strong as it is. To me, I can't see it as being more than just talking in circles about the same thing over and over again. I don't see how that's entertaining. But, some people find entertainment out of that, talking in circles. I don't. Let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna make sure I don't miss anything. I love how you can get into the criminals' minds. I appreciate that, I think. Well, to me, it's more about like understanding who he is, Bryan Kohberger, right? Looking at his writings, looking at who he said he was and who he thought he was, and seeing who he was associating himself with, like the whole, like how I was able to predict the American Psycho connection with him and with Bryan Kohberger and his fascination. It came from his Tappa talk. And then watching the movie American Psycho and being like, this sounds like the same thing. And then you realize everything that he's done is almost some sort of copycat, whether it was Daniel Rawlings, with the Scream and using the K-bar knife and or Ted Bundy going into somewhat of a sorority house. I'm not going to say it's a sorority house because it wasn't really a sorority house, but it was young ladies who were part of sororities. And so he had no authentic thought or process or mind, period. That's why I believe he dug and buried the knife sheath. I believe that because, one, this guy is a guy that doesn't want to relinquish control. I think he likes control. I think he likes the fact that he hasn't been, that nobody knows why he did this. The only person that knows that is him. That's like holding, like, that's probably to him the equivalent of holding something very rare and valuable that nobody else has. I think he gets off on that. And so if he's that kind of person that gets off on that type of control and hasn't come forward, and I think he has a lot of control and self-discipline, because, and this is one of the things that also got me tied into his mind, which is why I was able to predict or deduce that he probably had some sort of either radio or was listening to Broadcastify. And I had said that for a long time. And it was because he had not returned back to the residence after the bodies were found. He'd only returned one time, and that was before the bodies were found. And for somebody to, for one, we have to know his background and who he is, like I mentioned. And he would have known that they would have put cameras up, which they did. Some of the Kohbergers try to use that image of the cameras that they had put up, saying that it was part of some sort of AV club crap, but it wasn't. It was police cameras that they were putting up to try to capture if the killer went back and drove by, because that's a telltale sign of returning back to the scene. And for him to have lived so close and for him not to do it says a lot. Says a lot to me. And so for him to have done it that morning told me that it was more than it not being on the news, because it not being on the news doesn't mean that the scene hadn't been discovered. It just means that it hadn't been reported to the news and the news hadn't gone on scene. But that crime scene could have been found the moment he left his house, as he's arriving into Moscow, as he's driving around the area. Law enforcement could have been pulling up with lights and sirens. And you know what's going on? Lights and sirens on dash cams, or in police units, they're dash cams. And it's recording when you have your lights and sirens on. So he would have ran a risk of being captured in the area or anything like that on their footage that morning. So he had to have had something that made him feel comfortable enough to go back. And to me, I thought that was just basically he had to have been listening to the radio, whether it had been a radio that he took from the cam lab or it was Broadcastify. And then we find out after he pleads out that this guy downloaded Broadcastify just before the murders. So what does that tell you? Now, it's not that I'm psychic. It's not. I don't believe in that. It was just the power of deduction, knowing who this person is, and knowing some of the decisions that they made and why they would have made those decisions. What does that mean about the type of person and their mentality and what they're thinking to have made that much or had that much train of thought or forethought to have done certain things? Just like the trip back home. And I had to Pullman after the murders. I had put out a map of where I think this person drove to get out of Moscow before his arrest, and it was accurate. And how I was able to do that? I was able to do that because law enforcement did not leave the city of Moscow to find clues about the killer until the screenshot at 3:40 something in the morning from the gas station clerk that started to circulate. Once that came out, that's when they left, and it had been some time already. And it had already been, I think, after December 7th, because they were looking for the white Elantra at that point, or the white vehicle. And so that comes out. Immediately after that, they're in different cities outside of Moscow looking at camera footage from gas stations and things of that nature. So that told me that the person left that area without being caught on camera, and that law enforcement up until that point were unsure if he had left the city limits of Moscow. Now, when I looked at the area and I started looking in cameras, there was a camera on the roadway. I think it was like 191 or 195. I can't remember the highway name, that was leaving south of Moscow and Palouse River Road. There's a camera there. Now, unbeknownst to me, it doesn't record, and it didn't have access to it by law enforcement. They didn't have access to it. I didn't know that. Bryan Kohberger didn't know that. And so even though Bryan Kohberger didn't know that, I assumed that he would have probably assumed that it was working and he had to go a different route. And so I found a route that got out of that neighborhood and out of Moscow without being seen on camera. And sure enough, that's the route he ends up taking. And so, again, it's just the power of deduction, knowing who the suspect is and going past the initial bit of information. It's taking the information, the evidence, and then saying, all right, well, that makes sense, but how can we go further? Like, for instance, when the Kohbergers would say his phone turned off because he was out of the area, or his phone could have died, or whatever the case. I think the biggest one was that he was out of cell service. Now, on the surface, okay, that's a reasonable explanation. But if you think about it a little bit further, it doesn't make sense. The reason why it doesn't make sense is because his phone turned off in Pullman, and he drove through Moscow at some point because his phone turns on traveling southbound just outside of Moscow. And so why it doesn't make sense is that his phone would have had to have lost signal when phone service would have been the strongest, driven through Moscow when service should have been the strongest, and returned and stayed when service should have been the weakest. And then you also have to factor in, did anybody else have these problems? Was there anybody else that had cell service coverage issues in those areas? And if they didn't, you can deduce that this son of a gun turned his phone off. It's not hard. It's not hard. Why hasn't the footage of BK being arrested and questioned? I have no idea. I think they didn't have any footage of him I don't think they had like body cam when they arrested him. I think there's recordings of him during his interrogation, though. The fact that people are still covering it daily for hours trying to convince people that he's innocent for money is sick. Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. Let me see if I have anything else starred, guys. Yes, I do. We got Vegas Layla coming in with their membership for 22 months. Thank you. All righty, guys. I'm going to answer maybe one more, two more if I see anything. And then we're going to call this one a show, guys. They don't require body cameras in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And the picture they have of him sitting down is a camera, like a phone camera. So I know that law enforcement also said they were maybe watching a feed. I don't know if that feed was recorded or not. I mean, I don't know. But at the end of the day, what do you think happened in that moment, in those moments? You think they planted something on him? They didn't find anything. They didn't find the knife sheath. I mean, the knife. They didn't find anything. So by them not recording his interrogation or any of those things, it's not like he confessed and they're saying, hey, he confessed during this conversation. We got something. What is the benefit of withholding that information? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we thinking here? I'll entertain it. I'll entertain the idea, but we got to go past the surface of it's suspicious that there's no video of his interrogation and no video of his arrest. Okay. Outside of it's suspicious, how is it beneficial to law enforcement at this point? Did they say he confessed and that it was in that interrogation that they're not showing? If that's the case, I think you got a point. Did they find something during the search that connected back to Bryan Kohberger's at his arrest? If that's the case, if they found something, you got a point. If they didn't, I get it, but ultimately, what does it mean? Not very much. Not very much. So, guys, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. I'm going to be back tomorrow morning. I'll see you guys there. Please, if you guys are interested in the Tepe case, I've been covering that. Hit the like button and subscribe. I'm going to continue to cover the Tepe case, the dentist and his wife who were found gunned down in their home. 2 young children remain alive at the scene. Some suspicious stuff there. And I'm kind of wondering if this is a person of a similar mindset of Bryan Kohberger, or if this is a robbery gone wrong. I have a lot of thoughts on the case. I broke it down last night. Please go watch it if you're interested. If what you like my coverage on Bryan Kohberger, you'll like my coverage in that case as well. So please go like it and share it as well. I'm actually going to be coming out with Crime Scene Collective, I think on Tuesday night, about that case, if I don't talk about it from here to there. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until next time, peace out, y'all. Bye.